Johnny Talk Sports in with the Week 8 NFL predictions. Last week I went a very impressive 11-3, which is a huge bounce back after my worst pick record of the season. So hopefully with a good Week 7 carries over into Week 8. So before I get to the picks, I do want to say, if you want to check out my Week 9 college football predictions, I'll put the link to that in the description box down below. So check that out if you'd like. We are at Week 8 of the NFL season. We are getting pretty close to the halfway point in the 2020 NFL season. So let's get to the picks. As always, we begin with the game on Thursday night. And this Thursday Night Football features the Falcons and the Panthers. Last week, the Falcons came up with a new innovative way to lose a football game, scoring a touchdown instead of just stopping at the 1 or 2 yard line and let your kicker Younghoe Koo kick the game-winning field goal, but instead they scored the touchdown too early, gave Matthew Stafford plenty of time to go down the field and throw a game-winning touchdown pass to T.J. Hawkinson. Honestly, at least the Falcons, at least they're tanking, it looks like. At least it would be beneficial for them to tank, because I don't see really any reason for the Falcons to want to try to win games. I think now the Falcons are 1-6, I'd say the playoffs are pretty much out the window at this point, if they weren't already. Meanwhile, the Panthers, they are coming off of a 2-game losing streak, losing last week to New Orleans after losing to the Bears the week before that. And it looks like Christian McCaffrey could be taken off the IR this week, although I'm not really sure if he's going to play. I would say McCaffrey will probably definitely be back, possibly next week, as far as the worst case scenario is for the Panthers. Because believe it or not, the Panthers, I think, are kind of still in the NFC South. I feel like if the Panthers ran the table, they could be a dangerous playoff team. Because you have DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson really stepping it up in the Panthers passing game. And the Panthers, they could have at least taken the Bears to overtime, but a drop pass on 4th down to end the game. And even though Julio Jones will be playing in this matchup for the Falcons, as he wasn't in the lineup when these two squared off a couple of weeks ago, I still think that Falcons defense is still lackluster. I don't think that the coaching change to Raheem Morris is going to really do much in this matchup. I anticipate the Panthers winning this Thursday night matchup. I anticipate DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson completely taking advantage of the lackluster Falcons secondary. I think the Panthers win this one big. Next, we have the Patriots and the Bills. The Patriots really struggling these last 2 weeks. The Bills are struggling too. Both of these teams have struggled in recent weeks. The Bills, just a few weeks ago, a lot of people, including myself, were talking about maybe Josh Allen is entering himself into the MVP race. But the Bills, they have struggled the last 3 weeks, only averaging 17 points per game on offense. The only thing that went right for the Bills this past weekend was they got to play the Jets. A performance like that, they'd lose to almost every other team in the league with the way they played last week. At least the Bills did well defensively, only allowing 10 points to the Jets. Well, the Patriots, they just got steamrolled and completely outplayed by the 49ers. The 49ers, they're kind of looking a little bit stronger these last 2 weeks. 49ers overcoming adversity with those lost injuries, those lost players to injury. I see this game being completely low scoring. I don't see this being high scoring at all. Cam Newton even got benched in the game last week against San Francisco. While the Bills, they may be struggling these last couple of weeks, but this could be a defensive battle. And I think this came down to offense. I would give it in the Bills' favor, considering both these offenses have really struggled. I think Josh Allen has at least been doing a little bit better throughout really a lot better overall than I believe Cam Newton has. So I'm going to pick the Bills to win a very low-scoring game. I'm going to say it's in the neighborhood of 17-13. I don't see a lot of scoring in this game. In fact, sometimes when these two teams play each other, it is quite low scoring, and it has been in recent years. So I will take the Bills in a low scoring slugfest. Next, we have the Titans and the Bengals. Despite the loss last week, Joe Burrow put up amazing numbers. And for the Titans, they suffered their first loss of the season to the Steelers, 27-24. Steven Gostkowski missed a field goal to potentially send the game into overtime. And the Titans, can they bounce back? And how will the Bengals respond after a monster performance by Joe Burrow? I think that the Titans are going to bounce back this week. I think there's really no question in this matchup. AJ Green, he's improving in that Bengals passing game, in that passing offense for the Bengals. But I think the Titans are going to bounce back. I think that the Titans, they kind of got the reality check. They needed to be humbled a bit because there were some performances throughout the season so far. The Titans, they should have lost. And even though the Titans, they're still only having one loss in the season, they could easily have maybe 2, 3, even 4 losses this season. So I'm going to pick the Titans to win this game. I think the Titans are going to look like a dominant team in this matchup, but it's only because it's the Bengals, and I'm not completely sold on the Titans moving forward. I know that the Titans, they made a run all the way to the AFC title game last year, but I'm just still not sold on this Titans team. I know that Derrick Henry, he is probably going to go on a late season run, but still, I just don't think this Titans team is capable of winning the Super Bowl. I really can't see that happening. I mean, the Titans got some weapons on offense, Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. Corey Davis is getting right back into the Titans passing after missing a couple of weeks, being put on the injury reserves list. The Titans, they'll bounce back this week. Next, we have the Raiders and the Browns. The Browns, really shocking everybody right now, being 5-2. While the Raiders, they are coming off a loss to Tampa Bay, even though the Raiders, they seem to move the ball pretty well on that Tampa Bay secondary. I mean, the Buccaneers, they get mentioned for having a really stellar defense, but the Raiders, they were able to put some points up, they were able to get some yards right on that defense. Nelson Aguilar was burning the Buccaneers secondary. And the Browns, devastating injury to Odell Beckham Jr., torn ACL, out for the season. So Rashard Higgins has got to step up in the Browns offense if the Browns want to keep up their winning streak. Well, not really necessarily a winning streak, but if they want to keep up their winning ways for this season. But I think the Raiders are going to win this game. I don't know if this is going to necessarily classify as an upset. I would say that it probably will, just because the Browns are, 5-2. So I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this matchup. I think that Derek Carr is going to, he's going to find his open receivers, because the Browns secondary still looking a little depleted. And I'll pick the Las Vegas Raiders. Next, we have the Colts and the Lions. And let me tell you, I think this game can go in either direction. The Lions, they've got some speed receivers. They got some talented receivers, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. While the Colts defense, it is looking like the best defense statistically, and even the best defense in the National Football League. So I think this goes in either direction. The Colts offense, it has seemed to struggle throughout the season. T.Y. Hilton hasn't seemed to have been able to get going throughout this season. And the Colts are adapting to a run-first offense with Jonathan Taylor leading the way, the rookie out of Wisconsin. And for this one, you can nearly flip a coin for this one. I think it's going to be that close to call in this one. The Lions are coming off of a big come-from-behind win against the Falcons last week. Well, the Colts coming off the bye week. I'm going to give my edge to the team that's coming off the bye week, and that is the Colts. But this game, I think, goes in either direction. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Lions were to win this game. I think it's going to... I flipped a coin for this one. I kind of gave the edge to the Colts. just coming off the bye week, I think that the rest is going to be needed, especially the Lions coming off an emotional victory in a game where many feel like they shouldn't have won, and it was just because the opponent beat themselves in that matchup in the process. So I'm going to take the Colts. Next, we have the Vikings and the Packers. These two squared off already this season back in the opening weekend of the season. Aaron Rodgers completely dominated against the Vikings. Davante Adams had 2 touchdowns in that game. And Davante Adams had a stellar performance last week against the Texans, and which was a much needed performance after the Packers got completely embarrassed by the Buccaneers. And I see this matchup being the exact same. I think the only difference could be that Justin Jefferson gets some more receptions. He gets some more targets because Justin Jefferson has stepped up for the Vikings in their offense throughout these last couple of games. And I think it's going to be much closer this time than it was in week 1. I think the Packers are going to win this game, but I think the Vikings could stay in this one. I think that the Packers are going to win this only by 7 points. I think it's going to be a 1-possession game. I think with adding Justin Jefferson into the mix more than back in the opening week of the season, I think it's going to be huge for the Vikings in this offense, especially with the Vikings coming off the bye week, extra time to prepare. I think this is going to be an offensive battle. I think the Packers win this. I'm going to say 45-38. I think the Vikings are going to get some points on the board. I think it's going to be a shootout. But I just got to pick Aaron Rodgers coming through in the clutch in the fourth quarter when the Packers need him. Because the Packers defense, it isn't the best defense in the league, but it's not the worst defense either. It's kind of an average defense at best. I think the difference is Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of his receiver matchups against the weaker and younger Viking secondary members. So I'm going to take Green Bay. Next, we have the Jets and the Chiefs. And there really isn't much to go over in this matchup. Although the only storyline in this matchup, it's Le'Veon Bell for the Chiefs going against his old team, the Jets. After the Jets released him when Le'Veon Bell requested a trade a few weeks ago, but then they couldn't find a trade partner, so they just released him. And then the Chiefs signed him. And Le'Veon Bell, we saw a little bit of him in the Chiefs offense last week. The question is, how much is he going to be involved this week? I think maybe he's going to want to try to be involved in this a little more. I think the Chiefs, they're going to let him be in that offense more this week, which is going to be kind of a challenge, especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire really proving himself throughout this season, especially opening weekend, the opener against the Texans, and against the Bills when they established the running game. And the Chiefs defense, they were really spectacular last week against the Broncos. And I think the Chiefs defense have another stellar performance. I think this game is not even going to be close. I'm going to say it's going to be like 45-7 Kansas City. So I think there's really nothing much to talk about. Next, the Rams and the Dolphins. The Rams are coming off of a dominant win on Monday Night Football against the Bears, while the Dolphins coming off the bye week, and it has been announced that Tua Tagovailoa will be the starting quarterback in this matchup against the Rams. And honestly, I don't think the timing is right to start Tua Tagovailoa. I know that Ryan Fitzpatrick has been a little bit inconsistent, but at least the Dolphins have been winning some games. I think that going up against the Rams, I think that is really not the best opponent to start Tua Tagovailoa in. I think if you were to have started Tua Tagovailoa, they honestly probably should have against maybe the Jets. I think that would have been a much better matchup for him to get his debut in, considering the Jets defense isn't that good at all. But the Rams defense, though, Aaron Donald is going to be coming after Tua Tagovailoa. Jalen Ramsey, he's got some confidence after getting an interception on Monday Night Football. The Rams defense just completely had a feast against Nick Foles and the Bears offense on Monday Night Football. And I just don't like the situation Tua Tagovailoa is getting put in this Sunday. Although he could prove me wrong, I just can't see it against this Rams defense. I think the Rams win this game. I think they're going to win this big. Next is what I personally think is the game of the week. the Steelers and the Ravens. The Ravens' only one loss of the season is to the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, while the Steelers are the last remaining undefeated team in the National Football League. And what a matchup this is going to be. AFC North showdown. Honestly, is it too late to change the schedule a little bit? Is it too early to flex games? I know that they were able to switch the Raiders and the Buccaneers from Sunday Night Football last week to bring us the Seahawks and the Cardinals, which honestly, that is the best exchange that you could ask for an NFL fan. What I think was the best game of the season so far for the National Football League. I wish that they could flex this game to Sunday Night Football or even the Monday Night Football game. Why couldn't this be either Sunday or Monday night? Because this game deserves to be in prime time. Although maybe they wouldn't do that because we're already going to see these two play again in prime time on Thanksgiving. So maybe that's why this is probably the reason why this is not prime time this time around. But at least we're going to see these two teams play each other in prime time on Thanksgiving night. So at least that's something to look forward to. But the Steelers, their defense is pretty stellar. They contained Derrick Henry pretty well in that matchup last week. And I think the running game is going to be very interesting. How is Lamar Jackson? How is Mark Ingram? Even J.K. Dobbins is starting to establish himself into the Ravens' running game. How are they going to be able to run against the Steelers' defense? Can the Steelers' defense rise to the occasion? And how will the Steelers utilize their new offensive weapon in Chase Claypool, who has completely taken the NFL by storm in these recent weeks? While the Ravens, they did sign Dez Bryant to the practice squad, which maybe somewhere down the line, maybe he could get into the lineup, but I just can't see that. But the difference, I think, in this matchup is you could argue to the Steelers, they haven't really played the most competitive teams. I mean, just to name some of the teams they've played the Giants, they've played the Broncos, they played the Titans, who I think was a fraudulent undefeated team to begin with. So this is going to be the toughest opponent the Steelers have faced this season. They've also faced the Browns. Although the Browns, they do look decent this year, but it seems like when they play the Steelers or the Ravens, they get a reality check. The Browns do. So the toughest opponent that the Steelers have played so far this season. And I'm going to pick the Ravens to win this matchup. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to utilize his mobility against the Steelers defense. I think for the Steelers to win this game, they have to contain Lamar Jackson, force Lamar Jackson to throw the football, kind of do what the Chiefs defense did, and eliminate the mobility of Lamar Jackson. But I think the Ravens will win and hand the Steelers their first loss of the season. Next, we have the Chargers and the Broncos. And finally, Justin Herbert got his first win as an NFL quarterback. I am so happy for him. And Justin Herbert, he has had an unbelievable season statistically, despite not being able to get the wins. I think as long as Coach Anthony Lynn, if he decides to commit to Justin Herbert, I think Justin Herbert can take the Chargers to the next level. And I'm talking he can get them to the playoffs, maybe the divisional round. I think if you can build the talent around Justin Herbert, I think he's going to be successful as an NFL QB. And honestly, Justin Herbert, I think he's a good fantasy option for the rest of the season. Because if you look at the Chargers schedule, favorable matchups for Justin Herbert. Favorable matchups for the Chargers moving forward. The Broncos, man, just nothing can seem to go right for the Broncos, although they did beat New England 2 weeks ago. Although maybe it's not as relevant as New England completely flopped against the 49ers last week, getting blown out. But now there is confidence to Justin Herbert. There is more confidence to him because he finally got that first win out of the way. And going up against a Broncos secondary that is a young secondary, a depleted pass rush with Von Miller being out for the entire season. I think the Chargers are going to make it 2 in a row. I think Justin Herbert, he's going to utilize his offensive weapons in Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry. I think maybe Mike Williams could get involved in this Chargers offense, although he didn't get involved at all against the Jaguars. How are they going to utilize a running game of Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson as Austin Eckler is still on the IR? And it is being said that Austin Eckler, he is not going to be returning from the IR anytime soon. It's going to be longer than anticipated. I think the Chargers are going to find a way to win this game. And I think the Chargers, they can easily win some games moving forward. Next, what I think is the second biggest game of the week, the Saints and the Bears. And really, maybe this game could have gotten flexed to Sunday night or maybe Monday night. But the Bears just played this past Monday, so that's why it probably wouldn't be flexed, even if they were allowed to do that. But this is going to be an interesting matchup. The question is, can Michael Thomas finally return to the lineup? He was slated to play last Sunday, but an injury in practice during the week sidelined him for yet another game. And for the Bears, Allen Robinson questionable after taking a pretty big hit towards the end of the game last Monday night against the Rams. The Saints defense really hasn't been that good of a defense since really week 1. The Saints defense, they seem to show some flashes against the Chargers, but really it was against the Chargers. And the Chargers, really, they weren't that good offensively, at least in my opinion. But I think the Chargers coming off the bye, I think there's more confidence in the Chargers offense now. Well, I'm going to pick the Saints in this one because the Bears offense, it went pretty silent last week against the Rams. And maybe the Bears, maybe it was because maybe they weren't the team that we all thought that they were. We thought the Bears were contenders. Maybe that's not the case anymore. And plus, I think the Saints, they picked up a huge confidence booster against a divisional rival in the Panthers. The Saints defense, it looked a little bit better last week against the Panthers. First time since really week 1 that the Saints defense looked at all decent. I think they'll look decent again this week against the Bears. And that is because their number one target, at least for Nick Foles and Allen Robinson, is questionable in this matchup. I would lean him towards maybe not playing this week. So I'm going to pick the Saints to win this one. Whether or not Michael Thomas is going to be able to play or not, I still think the Saints will win. I think they're going to really establish the run game of Alvin Kamara, even Latavius Murray. Because Darrell Henderson, he was able to move the chains a little bit on that Bears defense. So I'm going to pick New Orleans. Next, we have the 49ers and the Seahawks. The 49ers are on a winning streak right now. A 2-game winning streak, while the Seahawks, they picked up their first loss of the season in overtime to the Cardinals in what I think it was the best game of the season, at least to this point. And about this matchup, I think this matchup is going to be a very close one. In fact, I think this game will be decided towards the end of the game, and it wouldn't surprise me if we saw this game head into overtime. The 49ers running game has really gotten going these last 2 weeks. Brandon Ayuk has gotten going in the 49ers offense. While the Seahawks, they're going to be possibly without Chris Carson in this matchup. And that is going to set up the carries to mostly go to Travis Homer. Well, Carlos Hyde, then Travis Homer. Then we'll get possibly the rookie DJ Dallas getting some reps in this game. As Rashard Penny, it looks like he's not ready to return from the IR. And the 49ers, despite winning the game last week, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't really look that good. He didn't look well statistically. It was mainly the running game that carried the 49ers, kind of like how it was in the NFC Championship game where Jimmy Garoppolo got carried by the running game. Raheem Mostert is on the IR. Tevin Coleman, not sure what's going to happen with him this week. But Jeff Wilson and Hasty really carried the 49ers offense this past weekend. And I think they will again this week. But I think in the end, I think the Seahawks, they're going to win a very close one. I'm going to say it's in the ballpark of possibly 34-30. I think the 49ers, they're going to be able to get some points on this depleted Seattle Seahawks secondary. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to have a big performance against this Seahawks secondary. But I will pick the Seahawks to win the game. And we have the Sunday Night Football matchup between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And let me tell you, I couldn't think of a worse Sunday Night Football game. I know these games are scheduled in advance, but why can't we just have the flexing schedule this early on in the season? I mean, who wants to see the Cowboys going into a game where it's most likely going to be the third string quarterback, Ben DiNucci, going up against the Eagles? Like, who wants to see that? It's going to be most likely Ben DiNucci at quarterback for the Cowboys as Andy Dalton took a pretty big hit against the Washington football team. And it already appears that the Cowboys players, they are starting to turn against Mike McCarthy and against the Cowboys coaching staff. It appears the Cowboys players have just given up. Well, it kind of makes sense because really, ever since Dak Prescott went down, the Cowboys have just looked completely inferior compared to their competition. They completely got outplayed by the Cardinals, embarrassed by the Cardinals, embarrassed by the Washington football team, and they barely beat the Giants. Really, the Cowboys are lucky that they even have at least 2 wins this season, because they should easily be 0-7 this season. They really should. And it's looking like Mike McCarthy, he could be getting the axe after one season. So, with the Cowboys already turning on their coach, even the Cowboys coaches, they're already claiming that, well, they have the right game plan, but it's just not working out. Well, it's not working out. The players have given up on the coaches. At least the Eagles, they picked up a confidence win against the Giants in the division that is going to get to host a playoff game. Of course, that is, of course, if the NFL decides not to have the teams inside of a bubble. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game. It's not going to be pretty for the Eagles, although I do think they will dominate against Cowboys third-string quarterback Ben DiNucci. It's just going to be an ugly win for the Eagles. I really won't think anything of it. And finally, the Monday Night Football game, and this is honestly going to get a lot worse. Monday Night Football, the Buccaneers and the Giants. Now, honestly, who wants to see this matchup? I mean, the Giants, they have just been the Giants all season long. With the Buccaneers, Tom Brady has gotten better in these last handful of weeks. In fact, I believe only 1 interception for Tom Brady ever since the 3rd week of the season. And Tom Brady could end up being in that MVP race. He may have put himself in there. And this game, I don't even think is going to be close either. Although, if Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard were to find their way past the Buccaneers secondary, like Nelson Aguilar did last week, I think the Giants could have a chance of winning the game. The Giants, they could have beaten the Eagles last week. They were up by 11 with like 6 minutes left in the game last week on Thursday Night Football. The Giants coming off extra rest compared to the Buccaneers. But I honestly just don't think it's going to matter. I mean, they have over a week of rest going into this. So I think the Giants, they could keep this close. But I just can't pick against Tom Brady. I really just can't. Although the one time that he's lost ever since the Week 1 blowout against New Orleans, it was a 20-19 loss against the Bears, which was a pretty close game, a hard-fought one. And plus, Rob Gronkowski is getting himself into the mix in the Buccaneers passing game. So I'm going to pick the Buccaneers in this one. I think it could be close, but I just don't really know if it's going to really be that close. I think maybe the Giants could stay in this from start to finish, depending on if the receivers can get themselves down the field, like Nelson Aguilar did last week. I just don't know. I'm picking Tampa Bay. And those are my picks for Week 8 of the NFL season. For review, like the Panthers, Bills, Titans, Raiders, Colts, Packers, Chiefs, Rams, Ravens, Chargers, Saints, Seahawks, Eagles, and Buccaneers this week. like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you next time.